My name is William. I am 28 years old, unemployed, and tired in a way sleep never fixes. People usually don't guess that part first. They notice other things, the way my hair still falls neatly even when I don't try, the shape of my face, the quiet symmetry that makes strangers pause for half a second longer than necessary. I've been told I'm attractive more times than I can count. But attraction is a shallow light. It doesn't reach the places where exhaustion lives. My eyes give me away. They always do. No matter how straight I stand or how carefully I choose my clothes, there's something heavy behind them. Like someone who's been waiting too long for good news and already knows it won't come. I've learned how to perform confidence. I smile at the right moments. I shake hands firmly. I say, yes, I'm flexible. Yes, I'm eager. Yes, I can start immediately. I've practiced these lines in mirrors, on buses, in borrowed rooms. I say them so smoothly now that even I almost believe them. Almost. The truth is, rejection has become a rhythm in my life. Interviews blur together. Glass offices, polite nods, questions I answer too carefully. Recruiters who say, "We'll be in touch," with voices trained to sound kind. Emails that begin with "Thank you for your interest" and end with silence. Sometimes not even that. Just nothing. Days pass. Weeks. You stop checking your inbox because hope starts to feel embarrassing. I used to tell my friends about every interview. At first they were supportive, "You'll get the next one." They don't know what they're missing. Then their encouragement softened into distance. Replies came slower. Invitations stopped coming altogether. People don't like being around someone who reminds them how fragile stability really is. Some of them used me when it was convenient, borrowed money, borrowed time, borrowed empathy. When I needed something back, they vanished. Promises broke quietly, without apologies. One by one, they slipped out of my life like I had imagined them. Loneliness isn't just emotional. People say that, but they don't explain it properly. Loneliness has weight. Presses against your ribs when you wake up. It tightens your chest when you're surrounded by people who don't see you. Some nights, it feels like there's a hand wrapped around my heart, squeezing just enough to remind me it's still there. I've asked myself many times if I'm the problem. Maybe I'm too soft, too available, too eager to be chosen. There's a special kind of shame that comes from trying again after failing so many times. Each attempt costs something. Confidence erodes quietly, like stone worn down by water. This interview, this one, feels different because it has to be. I don't have many chances left in me. Not emotionally. Not financially. I'm standing at the edge of something I don't want to name. The moment where you stop believing effort matters. That's why this matters. Not because it's a dream job or a perfect company, but because it might be the last place I knock before I sit down and accept defeat. I don't want to become someone who expects nothing. I'm not ready for that kind of surrender. The building rises in front of me. Clean lines, glass reflecting a sky that doesn't care how I feel. A software house. Modern, quiet, unforgiving. I hold my resume in both hands, the paper slightly bent from being folded and unfolded too many times. It feels thin for something that carries my entire life on it. I take a breath, then another. I stand there, just outside the entrance, pretending to check my phone while gathering the courage to walk in. This piece of paper, this door, this moment, it feels like my final hope. And I step forward anyway. The office is quieter than I expected. As soon as I step inside, the door closes behind me with a soft, final sound that makes my shoulders tighten. The space smells faintly of coffee and something metallic, clean, controlled. Glass walls divide the rooms, reflecting light instead of warmth. Everything is in its place. Desks are neat. Screens glow without sound. It feels like the kind of place where mistakes echo. I give my name at the reception. The woman smiles politely and gestures toward a waiting area. I sit down, straighten my jacket, and rest my resume on my knee like an offering. My foot taps against the floor despite my effort to stay still. Then I see him. Stefan doesn't announce himself. He simply appears at the edge of my vision, and something in the room shifts. He's taller than I imagined, broad-shouldered, composed in a way that doesn't beg for attention but commands it anyway. 36, maybe a little older if you count the seriousness in his eyes. His presence feels deliberate, like every step is a decision. He offers his hand. His grip is firm but not aggressive. "William," he says. My name's steady in his mouth. His voice is calm, low, practiced, but not bored. He doesn't smile much. When he does, it's brief, controlled, as if he's learned not to give too much away. I follow him into his office. It's larger than the others, minimal but personal. A framed photo turned face down on the desk catches my attention, though I don't know why. The door closes behind us, and the world outside seems to fade. "Please," he says, gesturing to the chair across from him. I sit. My back is straight. My hands are folded. I'm ready to perform. But Stefan doesn't start with my resume. Instead, he looks at me, really looks at me, and asks, "How have your interviews been going lately?" The question catches me off guard. No one asks that. They usually jump straight into qualifications, software languages, timelines. This feels personal. I hesitate. Then I answer honestly. "Not great." He nods once, like that confirms something rather than disappoints him. "Why do you think that is?" I tell him about my skills, my experience, the gaps I can't hide anymore. I expect interruption, correction, a polite shift back to technical questions. It doesn't come. He lets me finish. He waits. When he does speak, it's not to challenge me but to ask deeper questions. Where did I learn to work under pressure? What motivates me when things fall apart? What do I do when I fail? Fail. The word lands between us, heavy and open. I feel exposed in a way that has nothing to do with professionalism. This isn't an interview. It feels like a conversation I didn't know I was allowed to have. My chest tightens, but not from fear. From something closer to relief. I find myself talking more than I planned to. About starting over. About learning quickly because I had no choice. About wanting stability not for luxury, but for peace. Stefan listens without judgment. He doesn't check the clock. He doesn't glance at his phone. His eyes stay on mine, steady, intent. There's an intensity there, not sharp, not cold, but focused. Like he's memorizing something important. Once, our eye contact lasts a second longer than necessary. I notice it. I'm sure he does too. Neither of us looks away immediately. There's no flirtation, no smile to soften it. Just a quiet awareness that makes my pulse stumble. When he finally glances at my resume, it's almost an afterthought. He asks a few technical questions then, but even those feel grounded in curiosity rather than interrogation. When I don't know an answer, he doesn't react with disappointment, just consideration. Time moves strangely. I don't know how long we've been talking when he leans back in his chair, folds his hands, and exhales slowly. "That's all I have for now," he says. My stomach drops. I nod, already preparing my practice thank you. My body shifts forward, ready to stand, to leave before hope makes a fool of me again. But he doesn't stand. He doesn't open the door. Instead, he looks at me again, thoughtful, unreadable, and says, "If you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little more." I freeze halfway between staying and going. And for the first time in a long while, I don't feel like I'm about to be dismissed. The light outside the glass walls begins to change. I notice it first in the reflections. How the bright white of the office softens into something duller, more distant. Keyboards stop clicking. Chairs scrape quietly against the floor. One by one, people gather their things and leave with murmured goodbyes. The office exhales, emptying itself. I stay seated. Stefan glances at the time, then toward the hallway. He stands, unhurried, and walks to the door of his office. I watch without understanding, my hands tightening together as he reaches for the handle. Click. The sound is small, almost polite, but it lands hard inside me. My chest tightens instantly. Not fear exactly, something older, something learned. The kind that doesn't ask questions before it reacts. My pulse spikes, my thoughts scatter, and for a split second I'm no longer in a modern office. I'm every place I've ever felt cornered. Every moment where someone else held control and I had none. I don't move. I don't speak. I just breathe carefully, like any wrong motion might confirm something dangerous. Stefan turns back toward me and stops when he sees my face. "William," he says quietly, not sharply, not defensively. I should explain. He doesn't come closer. He stays where he is, giving me space I didn't realize I needed. "I locked the door because I wanted privacy," he continues. "Not pressure. And certainly not fear." I swallow. My mouth feels dry. I hate that my body reacts before my mind can correct it. I hate that part of me still expects to be trapped when doors close. "You're free to leave at any time," he adds, gesturing toward the door. "If you want it open, I'll open it." The tension in my shoulders eases just a little. There it is, the difference. He names the power instead of pretending it isn't there. Manager, interviewer, gatekeeper. He doesn't deny it and he doesn't use it. "I don't want this conversation to happen in passing," he says. "And I don't want it overheard. That's all." I nod slowly. My heart is still racing, but something steadier forms beneath it. Respect. Care. Boundaries clearly drawn instead of quietly crossed. The silence stretches between us, thick but not uncomfortable. It feels intentional, like he's waiting for me rather than pushing forward. No one has ever done that for me before. "You don't have to answer anything you don't want to," Stefan says. "This isn't part of the interview. That matters more than I expect." I exhale, the breath leaving me heavier than it came in. Words rise to the surface, not rehearsed, not polished, just real. "I'm not good with closed doors," I admit. "I've had experiences." He nods once. No questions. No curiosity disguised as concern. "I understand," he says simply. Something loosens in my chest then. Not completely, but enough to make room for honesty. This isn't romance. There's no warmth in his tone meant to charm me. What he offers instead is safety, and that feels rarer. Stefan studies me for a moment, his expression unreadable but intent. Then he asks, gently but directly, "Why do you look like someone who's always ready to be abandoned?" The question stays in the air longer than it should. I open my mouth to answer it the way I usually do, with something light, something deflecting, but nothing comes out. My throat tightens, and for a moment I consider apologizing. Standing up, pretending I misunderstood. That's my instinct when things get too close. Retreat, protect, disappear before someone decides I'm too much. Stefan doesn't rush me. He doesn't lean forward or fill the silence with reassurance. He just waits, hands folded loosely in front of him, eyes steady but not demanding. It gives me a strange kind of permission, the kind I've never been given before. So I tell the truth. I grew up learning not to need anything. I begin, my voice quieter than I expect. Not because I was strong, because no one showed up when I did. My childhood wasn't dramatic enough to be memorable. No headlines, no single moment you can point to and say, that's where it broke. It was neglect in its simplest form, being fed, clothed, housed, but rarely noticed. Emotions were inconveniences. Silence was safer. I learned early that wanting too much made people tired of you. I became good at shrinking. I don't remember anyone asking me how I felt. I say, not really. So I stopped checking in with myself too. Friends came later, school, college, adulthood, but they followed the same pattern. I listened. I supported. I stayed. When they needed something, I was there. When I needed anything back, they were suddenly busy. Trust, once given, was treated like something disposable. Some borrowed money they never returned. Others borrowed pieces of me. My time, my loyalty, my softness, and left when it suited them. Each time I told myself it was fine. Each time, it hurt a little more. I've been replaced so many times. I admit, quietly, without explanation. My hands tremble slightly in my lap. I don't try to stop them. Relationships were worse. I smile bitterly at the memory of how hopeful I used to be. I loved fully, recklessly. I believed that if I gave enough, I would finally be chosen. I wasn't. I was wanted, but only in fragments. Only in private. Only when it was convenient. I was admired for how I looked, how I made others feel, how easily I bent around their needs. But when it came time to commit, to stay, to fight for me, I was suddenly too much or not enough. I've been called beautiful more than I've been called important, I say, and the words sting as they leave me. People desire me, but they don't choose me. There's a difference. My voice cracks then, and I hate myself for it. Heat rises behind my eyes, sharp and humiliating. I swallow hard, forcing the words out before fear shuts me down completely. I give everything, I continue. My time, my loyalty, my body, my heart, and somehow I still end up alone. The shame settles heavy in my chest. Shame for wanting, shame for hoping, shame for being someone who still believes in connection after so much evidence against it. I risk a glance at Stefan, expecting discomfort, pity, polite attempt to redirect. He gives me none of it. He hasn't moved. He hasn't spoken. He hasn't tried to fix a single thing I've said. His attention hasn't drifted for even a second. It's almost overwhelming to be seen so completely without being interrupted. So I keep going. I've learned how to be useful, I say quietly, but I don't know how to be kept. The silence that follows isn't awkward. It's sacred, like something fragile has been placed between us and neither of us wants to disturb it. For the first time in my life, I realize I've never said these things out loud. Not like this. Not without minimizing them. Not without pretending they didn't matter. And for the first time, someone is hearing me. Not as a problem to solve, not as a risk to manage, but as a person worth listening to. My chest tightens again, but this time it's different. It's grief. For the years I spent believing loneliness was something I deserved. I inhale slowly, grounding myself in the moment. I don't want to be strong anymore. I say, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to keep proving I can survive. I finally meet Stefan's eyes. They're steady, serious, and unexpectedly gentle. I'm tired, I say. I'm tired of surviving alone. Stefan doesn't speak right away. He studies me for a long moment, as if weighing something carefully. Not my words, but the trust behind them. I wonder if I've said too much, if I've crossed an invisible line. Old instincts flare, urging me to apologize, to pull back. Instead, he exhales slowly and leans back in his chair. When I was 17, he says, my father told me to leave. The words are calm, almost detached. That makes them hit harder. I didn't come out in some dramatic way, Stefan continues. He found out. A message on my phone. A name he didn't recognize. That was enough. He pauses, eyes drifting somewhere past the walls of his office, past the city, back to a place that no longer exists for him. I was given one suitcase, he says. That's it. No discussion. No shouting. Just finality. I imagine it instantly. A teenage boy standing in a hallway, holding something too small to carry a life in. I feel something twist in my chest. No goodbye, Stefan adds. My mother didn't even look at me. The silence that follows is heavy, thick with things unsaid. I slept where I could, he goes on. Friends' couches when they'd have me. Places I shouldn't have been when they wouldn't. His jaw tightens slightly, the only sign of emotion he allows himself. You learn quickly which parts of the world are safe at night, and which aren't. I don't interrupt. I don't know how. I worked whatever jobs I could get. I stayed invisible when I needed to, strong when I had no choice. He looks back at me then, eyes sharp with memory. I learned early that no one was coming to save me. That sentence lands with painful familiarity. Stefan tells me how ambition became armor, how success became a shield. He studied relentlessly, climbed every ladder placed in front of him, refused to fail because failure meant vulnerability, and vulnerability had once cost him everything. I built myself from nothing, he says, not because I wanted to be impressive, because I was afraid of being powerless again. The office around us feels smaller now, like the walls are listening. He shifts in his seat, hesitating for the first time. There are parts of my life that look stable from the outside, he admits. A career, respect, control. Then, quietly, but stability isn't the same as happiness. He tells me about the marriage. A woman who was kind, safe, acceptable. A decision made out of fear, not love. I thought I could outrun myself, he says. That if I played the role well enough, the truth would get tired of chasing me. Didn't. The marriage ended without drama, but it ended hollow. No betrayal, no anger, just the slow realization that pretending was costing them both too much. I've been divorced for years, Stefan says, and alone, even longer. I notice how carefully he chooses his words, how he never paints himself as a victim. He states facts the way he learned to, cleanly, efficiently, without asking for sympathy. People think I'm looking for perfection, he says. They assume someone like me must want control or youth or something easily displayed. His gaze sharpens, settling on me. I'm not, he says. I'm looking for connection, for someone real, someone who knows what it costs to keep going. Something inside me shifts then. The distance I felt between us, the difference in age, power, experience, softens into something quieter and more honest. You talked about learning how to survive, Stefan continues. I recognize that look, the readiness, the way you brace for impact before it comes. He pauses, then adds, I wore it for years. The parallel settles between us, undeniable. Different paths, same loneliness. Different ages, same scars. For the first time since I walked into this office, I don't feel like I'm standing in front of someone who holds power over me. I feel like I'm sitting across from someone who understands what it means to be thrown away, and to build a life anyway. The silence returns after Stefan finishes speaking. But it's different now. It doesn't press down on me or demand an escape. It settles instead, warm and steady, like something finally at rest. The office feels softer, less like a place of authority, and more like a shared space where truths have been laid down carefully. Neither of us moves at first. I become aware of small things. The quiet hum of electricity, the fading light beyond the glass, the sound of my own breathing as it slowly evens out. My body is still tense, but not guarded. That feels new. Stefan shifts slightly in his chair, not closer, not farther. Just enough to remind me he's there. And then it happens. It's nothing dramatic. No intention I can trace. His hand moves as he adjusts his posture, and the back of his fingers brushes against mine where my hand rests on the edge of the desk. The contact lasts less than a second, but my body reacts as if something significant has occurred. My heart stumbles, then races. A sharp awareness spreads through me, not desire, not exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. Fear and comfort collide inside my chest, leaving me unsteady. I don't pull away, but I don't chase the touch either. I just let it exist. Stefan stills immediately. I'm sorry, he says quietly. Not rushed. Not defensive. Was that okay? The question disarms me more than the touch itself. No one asks me that. They assume. They take. They move forward and expect me to follow. The fact that he stopped, noticed, gave me the choice, makes my throat tighten. Yes, I manage. It's okay. He nods, acknowledging the answer rather than claiming it. His hand remains where it is, close but not touching. The space between us feels deliberate, respectful. After a moment, he speaks again. May I? Just one word. Open-ended. Gentle. I don't trust my voice, so I nod. This time, when his hand finds mine, it's intentional, but still careful. His fingers rest lightly against my skin, warm and steady. There's no pressure, no demand, just presence. The contact sends a quiet tremor through me. My breathing catches, then slows. I'm aware of how exposed I feel. Not physically, but emotionally. Like he's touching something fragile inside me, something rarely acknowledged. This isn't about attraction alone. I know that. I've been desired before. That felt different, urgent, consuming, often empty afterward. This touch feels like being seen. Stefan doesn't move his hand. He doesn't squeeze or pull me closer. He simply stays, sharing the moment without trying to take more from it than it offers. I let myself stay too. For a brief, suspended moment, the world narrows to this quiet understanding. Two people choosing restraint, choosing care over impulse. We don't kiss, and somehow that makes it more powerful than if we had. I'm officially hired 3 days later. Stefan delivers the news the same way he does everything else. Calm, direct, without ceremony. I thank him professionally. We shake hands. The line between what we are and what we might be remains carefully intact. And for that, I'm grateful. I need the structure. I need the safety of rules. But something has already shifted. Work changes the way we see each other. Not colder, clearer. We learn each other in small, ordinary ways. How he takes his coffee when he's thinking too hard. How I get quiet when I'm overwhelmed. We argue lightly over design decisions. Share dry humor in meetings. Exchange looks when something goes wrong and neither of us is surprised. Emotional intimacy grows without announcement. One night, the office is quiet again. Another late hour, another deadline stretching longer than planned. The city outside is dark, the glass reflecting our tired faces back at us. We sit on opposite sides of a desk, laughing softly over something trivial, something that wouldn't be funny to anyone else. That's how it happens. Not with tension snapping tight, not with intention sharpened. Just a pause that lingers too long. A shared look that doesn't retreat this time. Stefan's smile fades into something softer. He doesn't move immediately. Neither do I. When he leans in, it's slow, careful enough that I could stop it if I wanted to. I don't. The kiss is hesitant, human. No urgency. Just lips meeting, separating, then meeting again as if to confirm what we're doing is real. My chest loosens in a way I didn't know was possible. Relief washes through me, warm and unexpected. At the same time, fear flares sharply. This is dangerous. I pull back first. I don't want to ruin this. I say, the words rushing out before courage leaves me. The job. What we've built. I can't afford to lose it. Stefan doesn't reach for me. He doesn't argue or convince. He simply listens, his expression steady, grounded. You won't, he says. And you're not wrong to be careful. That reassurance, quiet, unforced, matters more than any promise could. We talk after that. Not about rules written on paper, but about boundaries, consequences, choice. About how neither of us wants secrecy to turn into shame. About how this only works if it stays honest. Later, when we leave together, the night feels different. Not charged, settled. We don't rush anything. When we finally end up in the same space, the closeness unfolds gently. Sleeping together isn't an event so much as a surrender. Two exhausted people allowing themselves rest beside someone they trust. There's no performance, no proving. Just warmth, presence. The quiet understanding of bodies finally allowed to stop bracing. I lie awake longer than Stefan does, listening to his breathing even out. A strange emotion fills my chest. Something close to peace, edged with disbelief. I've been desired before, but this feels like being chosen. In the morning, nothing is magically solved. The risks are still there. The world hasn't softened for us. Stefan looks at me seriously before we part and says, "This isn't simple." I nod. But it's real. We don't pretend otherwise. We just agree, silently, honestly, that whatever this is, it's worth facing carefully together. We don't announce what we are. There's no dramatic shift. No moment where everything suddenly becomes defined and safe. What we do instead is quieter. We choose privacy, not secrecy born of shame, but intention. We let something fragile grow without forcing it into the open before it's ready. We see each other in the spaces that feel honest. Dinners that stretch longer than planned. Evenings where conversation matters more than the time. Moments where work stays outside the door deliberately. When we sleep together, it isn't about escape. It's about safety. I notice it the first time I fall asleep without bracing myself. My body doesn't stay half awake, waiting for disappointment or departure. I don't feel like I need to perform closeness or earn affection. I just rest, actually rest, beside someone who doesn't disappear when things go quiet. There's trust in the way Stefan holds space rather than claiming it. In the way he never rushes the morning. In how he doesn't leave before I wake, and doesn't cling when it's time to go. I didn't know how rare that was until I had it. Past relationships come back to me in contrast. How loud they were, how intense, how empty they felt once the excitement faded. I remember lying next to people who made me feel lonelier than I ever felt alone. Touch without tenderness, closeness without care. This is different. This feels like being allowed to exist. We talk about the things we have to talk about, the imbalance, the risks, the reality. We don't pretend the situation is simple just because it feels good. Stefan brings it up himself more than once. You have to be able to say no to me, he tells me, without consequence, without explanation. And I believe him because he proves it. He never uses his position to decide for me. He never assumes access to my time, my body, my emotional energy. When choices come up, they're mine. When doubts surface, he doesn't override them with reassurance meant to quiet me. He listens. He adjusts. That's when something inside me begins to change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I stop feeling replaceable. I stop waiting for the moment he'll realize someone else would be easier, younger, less complicated. I stop measuring myself against imaginary competition. He shows up the same way every time, not with grand gestures but with consistency. Calls when he says he will. Silence when I need space. Presence when I don't ask for it. Love, I'm learning, doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it just stays. There are no dramatic fights, no emotional roller coasters, no moments where affection is used as leverage. What we build is steadier than that. Quieter, stronger. I find myself thinking less about being chosen and more about choosing. Choosing to stay open, to trust what's happening instead of sabotaging it out of fear. One night, as we lie beside each other, I realize I'm not rehearsing my exit. I'm not preparing for loss. I'm just there. And for someone who has spent his whole life surviving, that feels like love in its truest form. I spend a long time thinking about what love is. Not the stories I've been told, not the movies or books that glamorize desire, but the kind of love that survives, that persists, that doesn't need spectacle to prove itself. Gay love, I've realized, is rarely the fantasy it's made out to be. It's not about sudden passion that burns brightly and leaves nothing behind. It's not about secrecy, the kind that bends your life into hiding. And it's not about shame, the quiet, heavy weight that tells you you are too much or too wrong to be loved openly. What Stefan and I share is the opposite. It's survival. It's resilience. It's tenderness. Every day I see it in the way he listens when I speak. In the way he doesn't push, doesn't take. In the way we navigate our lives carefully, honestly, without pretending the world outside our walls doesn't exist. Love, I think, is being chosen every day. Not simply desired once and left in memory like a passing curiosity. Being chosen is something steady, something deliberate. It's not a single moment of affirmation. It's repeated, quietly, without fanfare. And in that repetition, it becomes trust. It becomes safety. It becomes home. We face the world together now. Not just in the office behind closed doors or in stolen hours. Public reality is unavoidable. People see us. We navigate it cautiously, yes, but openly enough to remind ourselves we are not ashamed. I no longer shrink when someone looks at me or wonders about my life. I walk with a steadiness that feels new, because I am no longer pretending to be invisible. I stop hiding who I am. I stop apologizing for my desires, my love, my truth. With Stefan, there is no need. There is understanding, respect, and patience. There is a recognition that love isn't fragile because it's hidden. Love is fragile because it requires honesty, courage, and endurance. I reflect on the years I spent alone, on the betrayals, the rejections, the endless rehearsals of a life that might have been enough to make me hard or bitter. And I realize something. Love doesn't fix those years, but it softens them. It doesn't erase fear, but it replaces it with something steadier, internal peace. I lie awake sometimes, listening to Stefan breathe beside me, and I can feel it settling in my chest. It's not a fire that scorches. It's a warmth that fills the empty spaces I've carried for so long. I am not abandoned. I am not invisible. I am not alone. True gay love, I finally understand, is not a story for others to admire. It is lived quietly, with intention, with courage, with the conscious act of choosing and being chosen. It is standing beside someone in full light, acknowledging risk, facing reality, and still deciding every day that this connection is worth it. And in that understanding, the fear I carried for so long of loss, of rejection, of being unseen, recedes. In its place, a steady, quiet peace. I am home. 1 year has passed since that evening in the office, the night the door clicked closed behind us, the night I first spoke aloud about being tired of surviving alone. I can still feel the weight of that moment, even now, as I sit at my desk in the same office, sunlight streaming in across neat lines of paperwork and softly humming computers. I am different, not dramatically so, not in ways that make strangers stop me on the street, but in ways that matter most to me. I am confident in ways I never allowed myself to be. I stand straighter, speak louder, laugh more freely. I no longer brace for the moment someone will decide I am too much or not enough. Stability, something I once thought impossible, is no longer a fragile dream but a quiet part of my daily rhythm. I am grounded, centered, and aware of what it feels like to be chosen rather than tolerated. Stefan has changed too, though in ways less obvious but just as profound. He has always carried power in a way that demanded respect, but now I see a softness there, a relaxation in the presence he offers. He no longer bears the quiet weight of solitary vigilance the way he once did. He is no longer alone. We are not perfect. We are still human, still learning. We still stumble over words and intentions sometimes, still wrestle with insecurities that rise uninvited. But perfection has never been the point. Honesty is. Consistency is. The small choices we make each day to show up for one another, to honor boundaries, to respect the fragility of trust. That is what makes our relationship whole. I often think back to that locked office moment, to the second Stefan asked me why I looked like someone ready to be abandoned. I can remember the sharp panic that rose inside me, the old fear of confinement, of control. And I can remember the release, the way his calm words made room for honesty, for presence, for connection. That night was a turning point, though I didn't know it then. It was the moment the possibility of love, real, enduring love, first touched me. It wasn't flashy. There was no cinematic declaration, no thunderclap of fate. There was simply recognition. There was space. There was understanding. That is all love ever needs to begin. Since then, we have built a life of quiet, intentional closeness. Weekends are spent cooking together or reading in the same room, the comfort of shared silence no less meaningful than conversation. Nights are softer now, where sleep isn't a means of escape but a place of belonging. We support each other's ambitions, honor each other's boundaries, and confront challenges not as adversaries but as partners. I see myself in ways I never have before. I see my worth not because Stefan tells me, though he does, but because I believe it. Because I have learned that love doesn't erase scars. It validates the survival, resilience, and courage that carry them. Sometimes, when I glance across the room at him, I feel that same quiet awe I felt the first time his hand brushed mine. That moment of tentative contact that could have been fleeting now echoes across every day we spend together. It reminds me how fragile, how precious, and how transformative connection can be. And I finally understand something essential. Love doesn't always rescue you. It doesn't arrive with magic or grandeur. It doesn't erase the nights you've spent alone or the betrayals that once seemed permanent. Love is often quieter than that. It shows up in ordinary ways. It chooses you every day, patiently and deliberately. It teaches you that you are not replaceable, that your presence matters, that your voice deserves to be heard. Sometimes love doesn't rescue you. It reminds you that you were worth saving all along. I close my laptop, glance towards Stefan at his own desk, and feel that truth in every calm breath. For the first time in my life, I am not afraid. I am not bracing. I am home.